"Look who's here, the disgusting old man." The voice of the uniformed police officer echoed through Magnolia Café in Chicago, causing all customers to turn and look. I was just sitting in a corner, quietly eating my breakfast when he approached. "My table." "I already told you I don't want to be in the same place as you, old man. Get out." Before I could respond, I felt the hot liquid running down my face and clothes as he deliberately poured his coffee over me. "This place is frequented by decent people," he continued shouting, while the other officers beside him laughed. "How many times do I need to tell you that I don't want to see you in the places I go?" The pain from the burn was nothing compared to the pain of being publicly humiliated by my own son. As I tried to clean the hot coffee with a napkin, I stared at that face I knew so well. Michael Thompson, my only son, the boy I had raised with so much love after his German mother Elise passed away. The other officers around him continued, laughing, having no idea that the old black man they were humiliating was their colleague's father. My clothes were ruined, but the pain of the burn was nothing compared to the burn of contempt in his eyes. 68 years of work, dignity, and sacrifice reduced to nothing because of the color of my skin. Walter Thompson, who had designed bridges and roads throughout Illinois, who had served honorably in the American Army during the Vietnam War, being treated like garbage by the fruit of my own blood. The same boy for whom I had worked double shifts as a civil engineer, the same young man whose Northwestern University tuition I had religiously paid for years, sacrificing my own needs. An elderly lady approached to help me, but Michael pushed her away. "Don't worry about him. He doesn't deserve your kindness." My thoughts went back to 30 years ago when I met Elise during an engineering project in Berlin. Our love transcended borders, languages, and cultures. When Michael was born in our small apartment in Evanston, we both cried with joy. Michael's skin was light like his mother's, with only subtle traces of my heritage. As a child, he seemed proud of me, always introducing me to his friends, always wanting me to take him fishing on Lake Michigan and tell stories about the great structures I had helped build. Everything changed when Elise died of cancer. Michael was 15. He gradually distanced himself from me, as if his mother's absence had opened a chasm between us that I couldn't understand. At school, he began to deny his origins, telling new friends he was only German. I noticed the pattern, but convinced myself it was just a phase, just grief manifesting in strange ways. "He'll get over it," I told myself, as I continued to work hard to ensure he had everything he needed. But he didn't get over it. As he grew, the distance between us also grew. When he graduated from university and entered the Chicago Police Academy, I was there, sitting at the back of the auditorium, watching with pride as he received his badge. He saw me, I'm sure, but pretended I didn't exist. Now, there I was, soaked in coffee, with all eyes in the cafe on me, feeling not just humiliation, but a deep sadness. How did a man who had built structures to connect people end up so disconnected from his own son? "Come on, guys," Michael said to his colleagues. "Show's over. This place is already contaminated." They left laughing, leaving me behind, soaked and ruined. The cafe manager, a young man named James, approached with a towel and a look of genuine concern. "Sir, I'm sorry about what happened. Your coffee's on the house, and if you need anything at all." His voice had genuine empathy. I thanked him and said I was fine, even knowing I wasn't. I didn't tell him the officer was my son. That was a wound too deep to share with strangers. That night, alone in my modest home on Chicago's South Side, I sat in the old armchair where I used to read stories to Michael as a child. The walls were decorated with photos of him, from baby to graduation. I looked at the phone, wondering if I should call him, if I should try one more time. But what would I say? How would I explain that the color of my skin, the same skin I had carried with pride and dignity throughout my life, was the source of so much shame for him. That's when the phone rang. It wasn't Michael, but Northwestern Memorial Hospital. "Mr. Thompson." The nurse's voice was gentle but concerned. "Are you all right? We were waiting for your treatment today." It was only then that I remembered I had a chemotherapy session scheduled for that afternoon. In recent weeks, after being diagnosed with advanced stage pancreatic cancer, I had become a regular patient at the hospital. "I'm sorry," I replied. "I had a difficult day and ended up forgetting." The truth was that after the incident at the café, I had been so shaken that chemotherapy had completely slipped my mind. "We can reschedule for tomorrow morning," she offered. "It's important not to interrupt your treatment, Mr. Thompson." I agreed and hung up the phone, feeling the weight of my own mortality. 30 days. That's the time the doctors gave me. Maybe less, maybe a little more. I didn't tell anyone, not even Michael. What would be the point? He had made it clear that I meant nothing to him. But as I sat there, contemplating the little time I had left, I realized I couldn't leave this world without trying one last time. Not out of revenge or resentment, but out of love. The same love that made me work tirelessly to give him a better life. The same love that made me endure his insults in silence for years. The next morning, after the chemotherapy session, I made a decision. It was time for Michael to know the truth, not just about my illness, but about everything. About how I had secretly paid for his college, his house, even his luxurious wedding to Sarah 3 years ago. How I had done all this behind the scenes, letting Elise get all the credit even years after her death, because I knew he wouldn't accept anything coming directly from me. How I had named him as the beneficiary of all my savings, my house, my life insurance. I wasn't seeking gratitude, never did. I just wanted him to know that despite everything, I never stopped being his father. On my way home, I stopped at a stationery store. I bought the most beautiful paper I could find, and with my careful engineer's handwriting, I began to write. Not a letter of accusation, but a letter of love. I included photos, receipts, documents, everything that proved how much I had done for him over the years. I wrote about Elise, about how she had loved me despite the differences, about how she would be devastated to see what our son had become. "Michael," I wrote in the last lines, "when you read this letter, I will probably already be gone. I don't ask for your forgiveness or your love. I only ask that you look at yourself and ask if the man you've become is the man your mother would be proud to see. My love for you never diminished, even when yours for me turned to hate. Always your father, Walter." 3 weeks passed. My condition worsened dramatically. The doctor suggested hospitalization, and I accepted. The hospital room became my world, the nurses my only company. Occasionally, James, the cafe manager, would show up with a coffee and chat with me for a few minutes. He had found out about my illness when he saw me at the hospital one day, visiting his aunt. We formed an unlikely friendship. He, a young white man in his 20s, me, an old black man dying of cancer. But he never looked at me with pity, only with respect. It was he who, without my asking, delivered the letter to Michael. He was at the cafe again, James told me. This time without his police friends. He seemed different, quieter. I handed him the envelope and said it was from his father. He didn't deny it, just took it and left. I thanked James for his act of kindness, not knowing if the letter would change anything. That same night, I dreamed of Elise. She was exactly as she was the day we met in Berlin, young, radiant, her blue eyes shining with curiosity. In the dream, we walked hand in hand across a bridge I had designed, talking about everything and nothing as we used to do. "You did everything you could, Walter," she said in the dream. "Now it's time to rest." I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hospital corridor. It was late at night and the lights were low. At first I thought it was just a nurse making her rounds, but then the door to my room slowly opened. It was Michael. He stood in the doorway, holding the crumpled letter in one hand. His face, usually so hard and arrogant, was marked by something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. "Dad?" His voice was almost a whisper. I made a weak gesture for him to come in. He approached slowly, as if each step was painful. He sat in the chair next to my bed, looking at his hands, at the letter, anywhere except at me. "Why did you never tell me?" he finally asked. "About the money, the house, everything." I took a deep breath, feeling the pain of the cancer spreading through my body. "Would you have accepted it?" I asked. He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. We both knew the answer. "Why?" he continued. "Why did you keep taking care of me after everything I did?" I looked at him, really looked, seeing not the officer who had humiliated me, but the boy who had once sat on my shoulders to watch the Independence Day parade in Grant Park. "Because I'm your father, Michael. That never changed." He looked away, but not before I saw the tears forming. "I was a terrible son," he said, his voice breaking. "The things I said, the things I did. That day at the café." I raised a trembling hand. "The past is the past, son." Michael finally raised his eyes to meet mine. "I found Mom's letters," he said. "The ones she wrote before she died. She mentioned how much you loved her, how much you loved both of us, how you worked day and night to give us a good life." He paused, swallowing hard. "I always knew deep down, but it was easier to hate you. I looked at my friend's parents, all white, all similar, and I wanted that. I wanted to be like everyone else." His words hurt, but there was truth in them. A truth I always knew, but never wanted to admit. "When Mom died, I blamed you," he continued, as if somehow being different meant you loved her less, that you could have saved her if you were like her. I shook my head sadly. "Cancer doesn't discriminate, son. It takes the best of us, regardless of color." I looked at the tubes connected to my body, a cruel reminder of that truth. Michael followed my gaze, and I could see the painful understanding in his eyes. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Not long," I answered honestly. "Weeks, maybe days." I saw the impact of those words on him, the realization that all the time wasted on hatred could never be recovered. He stood up abruptly, walking around the small room. "This isn't fair," he said, his voice now laden with anger. "I just found out, just understood." I smiled weakly. "Life rarely waits for us, Michael. It follows its own pace." He turned to me, his eyes now completely wet with tears. "I can't lose you now. I can't." Emotion prevented him from continuing. With effort, I extended my hand to him. After a moment of hesitation, he took it, holding it as if it was something precious and fragile. "You won't lose me," I said softly. "As long as you remember, as long as you live with love instead of hate, I'll be with you." We sat like that for a long time, in silence, the unspoken words floating between us like autumn leaves. Finally, Michael spoke again. "I want you to come live with me and Sarah. We have an extra room. We can hire nurses." I smiled, touched by his offer, but knowing it was too late. "Thank you, son, but my place is here now. What you can do is visit me. Tell me about your day. Maybe bring your wife so I can meet her properly." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I'll do that, I promise." In the days that followed, Michael kept his promise. He came every day after his shift, sometimes still in uniform. He brought Sarah, a kind woman with gentle eyes, who held my hand and told me stories about Michael that I had never heard. They showed me pictures of their house, the house I had helped buy, and talked about small renovations they were making. Once, Michael brought his police colleagues, the same ones who had laughed at me in the café. He introduced them formally. "This is my father, Walter Thompson, civil engineer and Vietnam veteran, the man who built half the bridges in this city." I saw the shock and then the respect on their faces, especially when Michael added, "And I'm proud of him." That night, alone in the room, I cried for the first time in decades, not from sadness, but from a strange peace, as if somehow the circle had closed. A week later, on a particularly beautiful autumn morning, Michael entered my room with a serious expression. "Dad, I have something to show you." He helped me get dressed, my body now too weak to do it alone, and took me in a wheelchair to the hospital parking lot where his police car was parked. "Where are we going?" I asked, confused. "You'll see," he replied with a small smile. He drove through Chicago, through familiar neighborhoods and passing structures I had helped build decades ago. Finally, we stopped in front of a bridge over the Chicago River, one of my first major works in the city. To my surprise, there was a small crowd gathered there, including the mayor, some of my former co-workers, and several reporters. "What is this?" I asked Michael as he pushed my wheelchair toward the crowd. "A deserved tribute," he replied. The mayor stepped forward, shaking my hand with respect. "Mr. Thompson, it's an honor to finally meet you. Your son told us about your impressive legacy for our city." Then, with a ceremonial gesture, he unveiled a newly installed plaque at the entrance to the bridge. It read, "Walter Thompson Bridge, in honor of a man whose engineering connected our city and whose character inspired generations." The tears came again, this time without my being able to contain them. Michael knelt beside me, holding my hand. "It's the least you deserve. Dad, I know it's late, but I want everyone to know who you are, who you've always been." That night, back at the hospital, I felt more tired than ever, but also more complete. Michael stayed by my side, talking about nothing in particular, just filling the silence with his presence. "You know," he said at one point, "Sarah is pregnant. We're having a boy." I smiled at the news. "A grandson," I whispered, my voice now weak. "What will you call him?" Michael looked at me, his eyes full of contained emotion. "Walter," he said simply. "His name will be Walter." I closed my eyes, feeling a deep peace spreading through my body. "He'll know everything about you," Michael continued. "About his grandfather who built bridges and never let hate consume him. About how you loved, no matter what." I felt his hand squeezing mine, a firm and loving touch. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." I opened my eyes one last time, seeing my son, really seeing him for the first time in years. "I love you, Michael," I managed to say. "I always have." He leaned in and kissed my forehead, something he hadn't done since he was a child. "I love you too, Dad." The next morning, I left this world. Not alone as I had feared, but with my son by my side, with the bridge bearing my name, connecting parts of the city I love, and with the certainty that my legacy would continue through little Walter, who was yet to be born. Michael told me that, last night, that he had requested a transfer to community work in the police department, wanting to make a difference in the same neighborhoods where I had grown up. "I want to honor your name," he said. "I want to be the kind of man you've always been." And I knew in that moment that all the bridges I had built throughout my life, of concrete, of steel, of love and forgiveness, would remain long after I was gone. The most important bridge, the one between father and son, was finally complete. And that, of all of them, was the one that mattered most. 5 years have passed since my father, Walter Thompson, left this world. Michael Thompson, once the source of his greatest pain, now stand as the keeper of his legacy. The morning after his passing, I woke to a strange emptiness, a void that no amount of regret could fill. In the quiet hospital room, looking at his peaceful face, I realized how much time I had wasted, how many moments I had thrown away because of my own shame and prejudice. The man who had built some of Chicago's most enduring structures was gone, and with him any chance to make things truly right. But I made a promise to myself that day that though I couldn't change the past, I could honor the future in his name. I returned to the police department with a new purpose. No longer hiding who I was or where I came from, I openly embraced my full heritage. "I'm Michael Thompson," I would say, son of Walter Thompson, the bridge builder. The looks of surprise from colleagues who had witnessed my cruelty at the café were difficult to face, but necessary. Some relationships couldn't be repaired, others took time, but gradually, respect replaced judgment. The transfer to community policing in the South Side, my father's childhood neighborhood, was approved. There, among the streets he once walked, I began to understand him in ways I never had before. My son, Walter, is now 4 years old. He has his grandfather's eyes, deep, thoughtful, observant. Though his skin is fair like mine, Sarah and I have made sure he knows the full story of his namesake, not just the triumphant parts, but the painful ones too. On weekends, we take him to visit the Thompson Bridge, where he runs his small hands over the commemorative plaque, tracing the letters of a name he shares. "Was Grandpa Walter a superhero?" he asked me once. "In many ways, yes," I answered, "though not the kind that flies or has special powers. His superpower was love, love that persisted even when it wasn't returned." My son considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. "That's a good superpower," he finally decided. "Better than flying." I couldn't agree more. My father's former firm, learning of my engineering degree that I had never used, offered me a position in their community projects division. I accepted, working part-time alongside my police duties. The symmetry wasn't lost on me, building bridges like my father, both literal and metaphorical. My first project was the renovation of a community center in the neighborhood where he grew up, a place where children of all backgrounds could learn, play, and grow together. We named it the Walter Thompson Community Center. At the opening ceremony, many of his old colleagues came, sharing stories I had never heard, painting a picture of a man who was respected not just for his technical skill, but for his kindness, his integrity, his quiet determination to excel in a world that often tried to limit him. Sarah and I have had another child since then, a daughter named Elise, after my mother. Unlike me at her age, she will grow up knowing all sides of her heritage, proud of the diverse blood that runs through her veins. The wall of shame I built between myself and my black heritage has been dismantled, brick by painful brick. I've reconnected with my father's side of the family, cousins, aunts, uncles I had deliberately avoided for years. They welcome me, back with a generosity I didn't deserve, embracing Sarah and the children as if no time had been lost. My German grandparents, now in their 90s, have even begun to acknowledge their role in encouraging my rejection of my father. "We were wrong," my grandmother said during their last visit, tears in her eyes as she watched little Walter play. "Your father was a good man. We were trapped in old prejudices." It was an admission that came too late for my father to hear, but important nonetheless. The journey of reconciliation continues, not just within my family, but in my work as well. The lessons my father taught me, not through lectures, but through his unwavering love despite my cruelty, inform everything I do. When I encounter prejudice in my police work, I address it directly, remembering how silence enables injustice. When I see parents and children divided by misunderstanding, I try to build pathways back to each other, knowing too well how precious and fragile those connections can be. Last week, I found a box in the attic of my father's house, which is now our house. Inside were blueprints, dozens of them, for bridges and buildings he had designed throughout his career. Each was meticulously drawn, every calculation precise, every detail considered, but it was a small notebook at the bottom of the box that brought me to my knees. In it, my father had kept a record of every payment he had made on my behalf. Tuition, rent, car insurance, even the down payment on our home. Next to each entry was a small note. Michael's education, an investment in a future I may not see, but one that will be brighter than mine. Michael's apartment, a safe place from which to build his dreams. Michael and Sarah's home, may it be filled with the love they deserve. The notebook ended with an entry from just days before his death. All accounts transferred to Michael's name, my final gift to my son, freedom from worry about material needs so he can focus on healing his heart. I sat in that attic for hours, holding that notebook, weeping for the father I had rejected, for the love I had spurned, for the years we could have shared, but didn't because of my own weakness. When Sarah found me there, I could barely speak, through the tears. "He never stopped," I finally managed to say, "even when I treated him like a stranger, like an enemy. He never stopped loving me, supporting me, believing in me." The café where I humiliated my father that fateful morning is still there, though under new management. James, the kind manager who befriended my father in his final days, now owns the place. He renamed it Thompson's in my father's honor. I go there sometimes, sitting at the same table where I once poured coffee on the man who gave me everything. It's a form of penance, perhaps, a reminder of how far I've come and how far I still have to go. James and I have become friends over the years. "Your father was proud of you," he told me once. "Even that day after what happened, he spoke of you with pride. 'My son, the police officer,' he said, 'never a word of blame.' Such undeserved grace still humbles me. The officers who witnessed my cruelty that day have all moved on to different precincts or retired. All except one, David Martinez, who now serves with me in community policing. I never made the connection," he admitted when we finally discussed that day. "Thompson is a common name. I never realized he was your father." His face showed genuine remorse. "I should have said something, done something to stop it. I'm sorry." His apology was sincere, but unnecessary. The fault had been mine alone. "We all have moments we wish we could take back," I told him. "What matters is what we do going forward. Going forward. That has become my mantra, my mission, my way of honoring the father I rejected. Every bridge my father built still stands, defying time, connecting people and places that would otherwise remain separate. His legacy lives in concrete and steel, in the skyline of Chicago, in the daily commutes of thousands who cross his structures without knowing his name. But his true legacy lives in me, in my children, in the lessons of unconditional love that I now pass on. I sometimes imagine him watching us, watching his grandson build towers with blocks, watching his granddaughter draw pictures of bridges, watching me finally become the man he always believed I could be. I imagine him smiling, that quiet, dignified smile I remember from childhood, before I learned to be ashamed of him, before I learned to hate what makes me who I am. The irony is not lost on me, that I, who once denied him, am now the primary keeper of his memory. That I, who once wished he would disappear from my life, now speak his name daily with reverence and love. That I, who once poured hot coffee on him to humiliate him, now raise a cup in his honor each morning, a silent toast to the best man I've ever known. Recently, I was asked to speak at a high school career day about my work in community policing, looking out at those young faces, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, mixed. I saw myself at their age, full of ambition but also insecurity, wanting to belong but not always knowing how. "The most important lesson I've learned," I told them, didn't come from the police academy or college. It came from my father, who taught me that true strength isn't about power or control or fitting in. It's about love that persists even when rejected. It's about building bridges when others want to build walls. A young man raised his hand. But what if you're ashamed of where you come from? What if you don't want people to know? The question hit close to home, the same questions I'd asked myself at his age. Then you're missing half of who you are, I answered honestly. And one day, you'll realize that the parts you rejected are the very parts you need to be whole. As I said those words, I felt my father's presence so strongly, it took my breath away. As if he was standing right beside me, nodding in agreement, his hand on my shoulder. The wound of losing him will never fully heal. The regret for the years wasted in rejection and hate will always remain. But so will the love, his for me, enduring beyond all reason, and mine for him, discovered too late, but preserved now. In how I live, how I love, how I build bridges in a world determined to erect barriers. My father once told me that engineers don't just build structures, they build possibilities. A bridge, he said, is not just steel and concrete. It's an invitation to cross over, to connect, to reach the other side. In his final days, he built one last bridge, from his heart to mine. And though I crossed it too late to give him the years of love he deserved, I walk that bridge every day now, honoring his memory, continuing his work, teaching my children that love is the strongest building material of all. Sometimes late at night, I stand on the Thompson Bridge, looking out over the Chicago River, feeling the solid engineering beneath my feet, my father's work, his legacy. I'm sorry, I whisper to the wind, and thank you for everything. And somehow, in the gentle sway of the structure, in the flow of the water beneath, in the lights reflecting on the surface, I feel his answer. I know, son. I've always known. And I've always loved you. In the end, that's what remains after the shame, after the rejection, after the reconciliation, after the loss. Love, enduring beyond all reason and logic, the greatest bridge my father ever built. Today marks the 5th anniversary of my father's passing. Sarah, the children and I will visit his grave, leaving flowers and small stones, an old tradition. From his side of the family, we'll tell stories about him, ensuring his memory lives on. Then we'll walk across the Thompson Bridge, feeling his presence in every step. And I'll remember the coffee shop, the humiliation, the letter, the reconciliation, the full circle of our story. A story of a son who rejected his father because of the color of his skin, and a father who never stopped loving his son despite that rejection. A story that didn't end with his death, but continues in how I live, how I love, how I remember. Walter Thompson, my father, the bridge builder, taught me that some chasms can be crossed, some wounds can be healed, some love can endure beyond all betrayal. And for that lesson, the most important of my life, I will be eternally grateful.